Are we good? Rolling? Okay, so today's lesson is going to be on the 5-line stave and its core elements. In front of you is a piece of paper that is commonly used when writing music. Okay, so just kind of a hot topic. What do we know about music? Like, any elements to it?
I know staff.
Staff, okay.
And I know you listen to music. That's all I know.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Genres of music.
Okay.
Didn't know this.
Okay. So yeah, like you said, the staff, that is one of the most core components to reading music. It is the pretty much the root. This marker doesn't work. None of these markers work. It's fine. It's fine. You can kind of see it. So
Yeah.
the staff is composed of 2 parts, which is on the paper, which is known, there are 2 parts, lines and spaces.
What's the difference between the lines and the spaces?
There's not too much of a difference. It's kind of just like where you put the notes to be read. So anywhere on this on the staff, you can put notes. You can put notes above the staff and even below it. But the staff is mainly used as the anchor to reading music. So now that we have the staff, we are then going to go on to clefs. A clef is basically kind of a structure to the music. There are 2 main clefs. There is treble clef, and there is bass clef. Basically, different instruments read these different clefs. Typically, instruments that play higher notes will play treble clef. Can anybody give an example of an instrument that might play very highly?
Trumpet.
Trumpet, yes, is a great example. Trumpet. Any other good examples?
I can think of a clarinet, but it's probably lower. Would it be lower?
Clarinet's range can kind of be dependent.
Okay.
They usually play higher, but I believe they play bass. One other might be the flute. All right. And then we also have the bass clef. Now, typically instruments that play very low will use bass clef. So what kind of instruments do you think will play very low? Yeah.
Saxophone.
Saxophone. Typically, actually, that's a good answer. It's a little complicated. There are different types of saxophones. For example, there's a bass, baritone tenor. I'm just fumbling on words, but it's okay. Baritone saxophone, that will play bass clef. But typically, your altos, your tenors, your sopranos will play treble clef, or even alto clef, which is a whole different thing that we don't need to get into today. Any other instruments that we could think of?
Drums? Would those be considered instruments?
Drums are instruments. They're a form of percussion.
Okay.
They typically don't. Yeah.
What does percussion mean?
A percussion instrument is typically something that you hit something with. For example, I could hit my marker on there, and that can be a form of percussion.
Like
I was just
clapping,
the
clapping,
cymbals.
The
cymbals.
Yes, cymbals. Good job.
I thought you were gonna go with clapping. Clapping's actually percussion.
Oh.
Some other notable ones: the tuba for bass clef. Okay, so now that we know our clefs, typically they go right at the beginning when you start a piece. So, for example, we'll use this marker is not organized. We'll use treble clef. So, now that we have our clef, the next thing we have to worry about is our time signature. Now, that can get a little complicated, but basically I'll summarize it. There are 2 parts to the time signature. There's how many beats are in it, which is basically a beat is kind of like how long or short a note can be. So it honestly is dependent on kind of like what kind of notes you have. But basically the beat is basically just how long or how short it could be. So the top one, if I were to put 4, this would tell us that there are 4 beats in a measure. And the bottom is a little complicated for today, but we'll just get into it. Basically it tells the meter. Now the meter is either simple or complex, but we won't get into that today because it's a whole different topic. So basically your typical musical instrument will typically use 4 over 4 is the most common one.
Why is it 4?
Typically, notes come in 4. For example, a whole note is 4 beats. A half note is 2 beats. Quarter note is a 1 beat. So you kind of see how the parallel is.
Mhm.
So that's the typical time of length and a measure. So now that we have our time signature, now we need to,
Can you have 2 of the like notes on the same like side? Like how you have it right there, can you have another one on the other side?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Like right beside the 4s,
Mm-hmm.
can you have another note in that space?
Yeah, no, you could. Typically, it's just these 2 numbers. That just tells you the, like I said, how many beats and the complexity of the piece. Some other ones that may not involve numbers, which is common time, which is the same thing as 4/4. It's just written like this, like a backwards C. And there's something also known as cut time, where you can see its line like it's cutting it in half. Basically, that's like 2/4. All right. So next thing we got to get into is the tempo. And the tempo is basically how fast the piece is. So the larger the tempo, the faster it is. So if I have your typical standard tempo is like 70, that's like 1, 2, 3, 4. But if I were to increase it to like 120, it'd be more like 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if I decrease it to say something like 50, that'd be more like 1, 2, 3, 4. So typically the tempo is put up here. For example, we'll just do 90 for now. So that tells you the beats per minute. So like I said, beats, like that. So anyway, the next thing we need to get into is a pitch. Now the pitch is determined where you put the note on line or space. So lower notes, lower pitches will be probably closer down here. But higher pitches will be more up here. Like I said, that's also dependent on your clef. This marker's just not working. I did not test the markers. Okay. So do we have any questions so far? No? Okay, so far with your paper, what I'm gonna have you do is kind of just jot down this right here. You already have the lines on there, so you're just gonna draw the treble clef. It's really simple. It's just kind of a line, bring it up, kind of like an 8, and you swirl it around, similar to that.
Alright, number step.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the circle and the non-circle 4?
Between the.
The 4, one's circle and one's not.
Oh no, I just circled that just for simplicity. Typically there wouldn't be a circle there. I just circled it for beat.
Same with the 90?
Yeah. I just circled it in the moment. Okay. So, like I said earlier, there are also notes. Those are typically symbols. So, for example, this, kind of like an open circle, that would be a whole note. That is consistent of, here I'll draw a little better, but that is consistent of 4 beats. There is then a half note, which is kind of similar to that. It's kind of like a D. It's open in a way, so it kind of looks like the letter D. Then there is a quarter note, which is similar, but the little circle is actually filled in. If that makes sense. There are also more notes as we go down, such as 8th and 16th notes, but we don't need to go over that. Okay. Alrighty, so any questions on this? No? Okay. So, I'm gonna give you guys a kind of like a quick quiz real quick, just to check over you have everything understood. So, what would you say the staff is?
The lines.
Yep. Consisting of what two parts?
Lines and spaces.
Correct. And where can notes go on the staff?
Anywhere.
Yep, anywhere on lines or spaces. Okay. What is a clef?
Is that the squiggly line?
Yeah, basically. Basically, it tells you where pitches go or where notes should go in correlation to it. Because in bass clef, the note, or in treble clef, this is known as a C. Dude, this marker just isn't working. In treble clef, that is known as a C, but in bass clef, a C to that same note would be all the way up here above it. If that makes sense. This marker just isn't working. Okay. What is, oh yeah, I didn't go over this. So the final part of understanding music is the key. Now the key is very simple. It tells you whether a note is either sharp or flat. So what that kind of means is if a note is sharp, it's a half step above where it would normally be. So example here, let's say I have an F here and I made it sharp. Now that would basically mean it would be in between an F and a G. It would make a pitch in between that. And then there's also a flat, which kind of looks like a lowercase b, that brings the note to a half step below it. So for example, if I were to make, actually F is a bad example because there is no F flat. But if I were to make this note, which is E, flat, it'd be halfway in between this note and the note below it, if that makes sense. Okay. I think that's about it. Is there any more questions?
Is this like a introductory level?
Yeah, I would say so. I believe that is it. I'm just gonna come around and check to see how you guys did with writing it. That looks good, actually.